Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the July 19th, 2022 edition of Bull Sessions. My name is Mark Robertson. I am joined here by Ken Kavula and Kim Butcher. Good afternoon, guys.
Hi, Mark.
Good afternoon, everybody. Good to be with you.
And as we were saying in the green room, Ken did go away and leave me unsupervised last week, so you know that's dangerous. There was a chance that Sean was going to join us this afternoon, but he is currently on the road also, so I don't expect to hear from him. He is the new sheriff in town. He's taken over the leaderboard #1 position in the Groundhog, but it's going to, hopefully it'll become quite a horse race as we go into the second half for the Groundhog. You are going to see some disruptions from the Google. I didn't talk about it anywhere here in the presentation, but as Ken has pointed out, some of our prices are locked up, and we'll be fixing that. And between that and the split, there's going to be a little bit of disruption here over the next couple of days. So if any of your fellow investing club partners or friends or family are hyperventilating, just wave the towel at them, cool them off, hand them a Sam Adams product, and take care of the situation. It'll all be okay in a couple of days. Okay, so we do want to talk about a couple things. The Global Smorgasbord is some fun with some of Kim's friends across the Great Pond over in Europe, and we'll get to that. The hunt for Bigfoot is actually a reference to that. The skull that was discovered, which is probably a hoax, but the skull that's pictured there was found a few years ago, and it actually weighs 90 pounds, so you can imagine the size of whatever that was associated with. But we'll talk a little bit more about that. And then we are going to talk for just a moment about people who are looking for a place to hide. A good place to go hunting for said place to hide can be what's referred to as the Dividend Aristocrats, and we'll cover that a little bit also. Any other thoughts, Ken, on your mind, or Kim?
No, I'm feeling pretty good. We had a really good model club meeting last night. Lots of great discussion, and we're going to bring some of that to the meeting today.
Okay, cool. All right, so again, here's your reminder. This is all about talking about real companies in real times, demonstrating the methods and techniques and philosophy of the modern investment club movement. It is about education, and again, underscore that word demonstration or illustration. No investment recommendation whatsoever is intended by what we do here. You're going to hear our interpretations, the things that we share with you, our opinions, but please do your own homework and form the basis for your own decisions, whether you're buying or selling your stuff. We may hold to the securities in our own personal portfolios, and we'll try to remember to let you know. The roundtable is a week away. It is our 12th birthday, so we'll be beginning our 13th year next Tuesday. I suspect that much of the content of next Tuesday's bull session will probably revolve around those 12 years. Those 12 years have seen us basically ticking around at about a 17 or 18% rate of return for our tracking portfolio. So we'll be doing a little celebrating along with the cake next week. If you want to be added to a reminder list about that particular event, it is almost always on the last Tuesday of the month at 8:30 Eastern Time. It is a webcast, so you can grab your favorite beverage and your jammies and attend. But send a note to nkavula1@comcast.net if you'd like to be added to a reminder list about that particular event. If you have any follow-up questions or suggestions, our two email addresses are there at the bottom of the page.
Mark, it's amazing that our audience will always help us out with facts and figures. Thomas, out in the audience, makes a comment that it was 2019 when Tracy Britt Cool left Berkshire Hathaway. Her company today is Canbrick, a play of the words Kansas and brick. So Kanbrick, Kim, is the company.
Oh, I found the article. I'm sending it to both of you.
Okay.
It's a New York Times thing, so you'll have to. I don't know if we could really post it on the forum.
Yep. Thanks, Thomas, for the information. Appreciate it. And Len Douglas has sent us a complete description of Fevertree. It began as a mixer for gin in the places where they drink a lot of gin and mixer, and it grew from there, Mark.
Yeah,
Excellent.
it started in the UK.
Yep.
Yep. Yeah, we'll be taking a quick look at that one later with screening results. All right, just a few charts to look at. This one really really impacts me because I have shared over the years how unreliable analyst buy, sell, and hold recommendations are, and that's not directly what you're looking at here, but by golly, it's related. And this thing was almost sub-zero by the time that Moody's downgraded it when it came to the investment grade. And we see this sort of thing. I used to actually playfully bring them up where a company would go from a strong buy at $120 per share. Next thing you know, it would be at $20 a share, and it'd be a strong sell. That type of thing would just make my skin crawl. And I think if you really start charting and looking carefully at the results achieved by people who chase buy, hold, and sell ratings, they are not a path to success in any way, shape, or form as far as I'm concerned. That's a personal opinion. It's a personal observation from looking at it very carefully. But
Mark, I even think some of the investment community is getting a little tired of some of the shenanigans that go into buy and hold and sell. And I'm noticing a new feature on CNBC on one of the morning programs, and the guy calls it the call of the day. And essentially, it's just he's pointing out somebody that's made an egregious call, months later than it should have been made about buying or holding or selling something.
Right.
So I think even they're beginning to understand that a lot of these calls are motivated by something other than trying to make a profit.
Yeah, and it almost comes down to like when editors or publishers of newspapers or magazines attach a title to an article that really doesn't match the article. There's some of that going on here too. Is it Joe Kernan that does that in the morning at CNBC?
That does what I was talking about? No, it's the program after Kernan's, after the morning bell. But he's doing it on a regular basis now, and everybody seems to get a real chuckle out of it, and it just makes the point that better investing as well as Manifest has made the point continuously that trusting some of the numbers that come from the analysts as far as growth is concerned is something we should be seriously considering. But trusting the conclusions that they draw from those numbers sometimes leaves a lot to be desired.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the other myths that you'll hear from time to time is that our approach to investing allowed most investment clubs to avoid Enron. That's not exactly accurate. In the early to mid 1990s, Enron was actually a formidable and a wonderful investment, and that did end, sometime shortly after that. But for quite some time, Enron was I think it got up into the top 50 of the Better Investing Top 100 at one point. So it was quite a respected and consistent and reliable company for a while. And for a considerable amount of time, of course, that changed rather dramatically. All right. Back to our typical chart. Again, just the point to be made. I hope nobody's surprised that we're fluctuating. The green bars are fluctuating around the blue trend line, and we are now officially in a white spot beneath the blue line. So no surprises are allowed. We expect this to happen. And in fact, we are currently looking at returns in the mid to lower teens for the average stock study. And that simply means it is time to shop carefully. Continue to be selective, but Ken even wants to put together a presentation entitled Back Up the Truck. And you know how conservative he is.
I'm been hearing, Mark, that the white spaces are supposed to signify recessions, and I know how many official recessions there are during this period, and there's a heck of a lot more white spaces than there are recessions. So just because it's moved below that trend line does not signify recession by any measure that we're talking about right now.
Yeah, in fact, I left a slide in there from last week just so you could see there are recessions in certain areas, certain sectors, certain industries, but I don't yet see the widespread recession, that we may have seen in the early 2000s and in 2008. So we'll see. Here again
I
is
like to listen, Mark. I like to listen to CEOs on the business news. In fact, that's what I like to listen to more than anything else. And I was struck by the duplication of language in a number of CEOs in the last 5 or 6 days that are all saying to the effect that if we don't watch out, we're going to talk ourselves into a recession. And that's really different than moving into one because of business circumstances. There's a number of outspoken CEOs that are of the opinion that we can, change things just by continually talking about them. The big lie, I guess, is a way to put that. And I think they're beginning to talk back a little bit. Maybe if we don't predict that we're already in a recession for 12 months before we get there, maybe that helps a little bit. So I'm just struck by the change in vocabulary and in language coming from CEOs as they're interviewed in public.
it's funny you would say that because we didn't rehearse this, but I was telling Ken before we got online that we spent the weekend with a very experienced, very, very, very successful real estate person from California. And the conversation actually started around the statement, you can talk yourself into a toilet paper shortage. and basically that was the tone, Ken, what you just said, that you can talk yourself into these situations. And then we went into the discussion about what to expect from real estate. And that's actually a really good segue to this, because again, he was talking about in terms of, inflation has taken off, interest rates have taken off. It will come back down. It won't go up like we saw in Germany or Brazil. If it does, there's a whole new set of challenges for all of us, and that's just not going to happen. There's two.
I have three garden carts in the garage. If it does, Mark, okay, I'll lend you one. All right.
And again, he was pointing out, the common sense thing that there are two aspects to inflation. One is the currency stuff. Basically you print a bunch of money and you cause inflation that way. And then the supply demand stuff that is caused by, just regular old supply and demand price fluctuations. And, you have to work pretty hard to get both of those way out of control for an extended period of time. And he thinks that that's going to happen. So that led to the discussion of, so with interest rates going up, what do you see with housing? And I know this is just music to your ears, Ken. He says, well, you got to look at the realities. He says, people are lining up around the block to put in offers at 15 to 20% over asking prices. Those days seem to have perhaps gone away for a while, perhaps forever. But what is still real is that there's not enough houses for people who need them. And this chart actually shows the continuing declining of inventory of U.S. homes. And that is also very real when it comes to people out there shopping for houses. And as Ken likes to point out, oh, by the way, there's quite a few people out there that are going to be looking for a house. And the last I'd heard, Ken, they have money.
Yes, they do. A lot of them.
So that's the reality of what's going on with the inventory. And then he just pointed this out that, keep in mind that what we just went through was nasty. You can see March 2020. You can point right to it with your eye. And he says, look, the reality is we're actually coming back and approaching what might be considered more normal, actually faster than many people would have expected. And so, again, the moral of the story is, he was fairly optimistic about good home builders. Did point some attention to the fact that multi-family housing units, the construction of those is actually off the charts right now. I didn't realize that, because of what's happening with rents. But he's saying we're just going to come back to something in the not too distant future where, yeah, it might take you a few days or a couple of weeks or maybe even a month to sell your house, but it'll still sell, and it'll sell
Mark,
at a reasonable price.
I have a question for you, Mark. Would a condo that has 3 units within it be classified as multifamily, or would it be classified in a separate category as condominium?
I don't know the answer to that. I always thought that anything more than one was multi. I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know.
So that I'm kind of boggled by the amount of condominium development that we saw moving up north and coming back, and even in my own neighborhoods here. Most of that are units with 2 or 3 or sometimes 4 units within a building, and I'm just wondering if that's multifamily, then that's not all rental anymore. It's this condominium craze that seems to be taking hold with my generation and your generation, Mark.
Whoever's generation is, but I'm here in South Florida. Let me tell you, condominiums they probably increased the number of condominiums, I don't know, 20, 30%. But the thing is we have a generation who are wanting to downsize. And then we're also having a generation who doesn't want the house because they don't want the yard work. They don't want all that other stuff. They want they think the simple life. So I think that's one of the reasons why condo living, so to speak, is getting to be much more. Because we have units, condo buildings. I mean, the condo that mom's in here has 160 units. And there's others that are, and this is built in 1965. But I could probably tell you of 20 new condo buildings that have been built within the last 5 miles in the last 5 years. And there's more going up.
Yeah. In fact, there's a chart that I did not put in here that we also talked about a little bit. And Florida was one of the states where it's considered a bit vulnerable to a price correction because of the demand situation. Again, supply and demand is a very reliable, almost law of nature over time. And Florida is a highly attractive destination for a lot of stuff. And, if we do get into some kind of an economic disruption, you could see a little bit more volatility, I'm sugarcoating it, in some of the Florida real estate for sure. But
and the other thing is, remember, Florida, and I saw where the highest areas where housing has gone up in value. It was 2 states that I saw was Tennessee and Florida.
Mm-hmm.
But that's also because of tax advantages.
Yep.
Again, our audience comes through for us here, and Bill, who worked in the mortgage business for a lifetime, says that a multi-family unit is more than 4 units within a building.
Okay.
And that means that there must be a separate category for the 2, 3, and 4 unit thing. Bill, set me straight if I'm wrong, would you? Do they have a separate unit when they tally them, or is it included somewhere else, maybe in just single family homes? And we'll continue. I'll be waiting for Bill to set me straight here, Mark. Okay.
Well, I left this one in, and we talked about this one last week, Ken, but this is one that we've liked to look at over time. Again, what actually happens during a real recession. And 2008, 2009 is actually scrolled off of this page. I need to put that back just to make the point. But what actually happens is our stock studies get wrecked because the companies with less profitability actually approach or go below zero. And so when a recession hits, the real impact on us is that some of these companies go sub-zero or whatever, become cyclical perhaps. The point being that we haven't had a really, really nasty situation, not even 2020, for quite some time. 2008, 2009 got down around 2%, I believe. Like I said, I'll put it back for a future slide. But, even with some of the nasty expectations for the rest of this year, it's really not looking like a gruesome, comprehensive recession. Now, some areas are obviously hit worse than others, and that's kind of what we saw back in 15, 16, where some, you could just feel like there were some aspects of the economy that were in recession mode, and that certainly was the case, but not overall. And that's kind of where we're at. And then, of course, the optimism is on full display there for 23, 24, 26.
And just to keep people straight that don't read graphs all the time, or that don't read graphs with forecasts on them all the time, this data is coming from Value Line. Value Line's coming out once a week and changing a certain proportion of its calls going forward. And that means that the bars for 22, 23, 24, and 26 are still fluid. They're still moving up and down as we get new information on them. The only ones that are fixed historically now are 21 and below. We had this discussion quite a bit back in 2015 when we thought we might be moving into a slowdown of some sort. And we watched those bars from 16, 17, and 18 move around quite a bit. And finally, in fact, the 17 and 18 bar end up back at trend where it had not been for a lot of the year.
Yeah, so those are definitely a work in progress, and we'll see how they unfold. One of the other, I'll call it neat analyst tricks, is they'll come out with their annual forecast about 10 days before the end of the year, so they can get really close to the final resting point of that red bar. So they would never do that.
I did get an answer from Bill Mark, and he indicates that the first category is homes for 1 to 4 families, and then within that category they will break it down to single families and families of 2, 3, or 4 family, that kind of housing.
Okay.
But multifamily is definitely more than 4 in a building.
Well, now I know.
And so do I.
Good stuff. I did not know that. So that's good.
Yeah.
When we're looking at those statistics. All right, Ken, you left me alone, so I got distracted. We used to be able to look at this stuff when we checked out at the grocery store. And there's not quite as much of this stuff here. And last week, there's some guy on YouTube. Some people in the audience probably know. I think he goes by Coyote Peterson or something. He found what he believes to be a Bigfoot Sasquatch skull somewhere in British Columbia. And this is actually one from Utah or Idaho from several years ago, but I just I find it interesting that we continue to watch for this stuff, and some of the stuff that boils around, and just the disappearance of those tabloids they're still there, but there's just not as many of them as there used to be. So.
I really find that chuckle-worthy, Mark. I'm thinking back 30 or 40 years when I would stand in the checkout line in the grocery store and be able to tell myself none of that's true. And now I'm standing in the line in the grocery store and I'm wondering how much of this is true. It's certainly a change in attitude, if nothing else.
Well, a lot of this stuff has actually moved onto our network news, and that's all I'm going to say. I can't even go there. But the reason that I bring this up, and Ken and I have talked about this in the past, is this notion of an efficient frontier, which actually comes out of modern portfolio theory.
Excuse me.
And this goes all the way back 70 years now. I didn't realize it had been 70 years ago, but it's a theory. Most of it, I think, is pretty weak. We'll leave it at that for right now. But you used to be able to go, and this is as recently as 10 years ago, you could search for the efficient frontier marketing materials for buying international stocks and basically trying to get people to invest X percentage of their portfolios in international stocks, the old 60-40 or 70-30 type thing. And what I find fascinating is now you Google it, you can't even find any of these pictures. I mean, there used to be hundreds and thousands of these marketing materials, and that's the connection to the Bigfoot skull, because you can't even find them anymore. And that said, we do believe that it makes a whole lot of sense to prudently pursue international investing when it makes sense. And but you don't need the efficient frontier to do this. And I draw everybody's attention to, this is an article from 14 years ago about John Templeton. And he was a big fan of international or global investing. And, you can read the article. His entire emphasis was on the same stuff we talk about all the time. Buy them, but demand and expect quality. And the Nicholson/Graham type of quality that we know all too well. And so it does make sense to go out there and seek that kind of stuff. So have some fun with that article. It's actually pretty good. They go through some of the main tenets of his whole thought process when it came to international investing. And Templeton has had a number of very successful international investment funds.
I think, Mark, very, very, very early in my investing career, an article by Templeton that spoke about international investing by not leaving the shores of the country was very influential in the way I still invest today. And that is taking a good, serious, hard look at United States companies that are doing half or more of their business overseas, and using a lot of that as the international component of what you're doing investing wise. Templeton wrote a little bit about that at one point. I read the article and it seemed to stick and make sense to me.
Yeah, something as simple as Coca-Cola gets 50% of their sales and profits from overseas. So, that's obviously doing some investing in commerce outside the boundaries of the United States. So this whole thing basically centered on Brad Perry winning the investment marathon, the book, and his whole advice was that there are investment opportunities in places like Helsinki. So good, clean fun.
And I used to believe in places in the Far East as well, but I was abused of that thought with a certain pulled pork company that you won't let me forget. So disabused.
All right. So with that, let's switch gears to talking a little bit about international opportunities, but quality in general. And this happens to be one of Kim's buddies from Twitter. She has a collection of people that she exchanges articles with, and this Professor Calco, I've never had a conversation with him. I did exchange a couple of direct messages, Kim. I don't know if you communicate with this particular individual or not, but you can see the compounding quality and the long equity. These are actually people on Twitter. And again, it is a place where you talk about some of the nice places on social media where you can congregate with like-minded people and pursue opportunity. This kind of stuff makes sense to me when it comes to investing and social media. So he and I have exchanged a few notes and had some fun. I did want to point out, Ken, that we are now going to have to add to our destination list. It's not just Punxsutawney, because now I think Varberg, Sweden, has to be on the list. This is Varberg up here in the place on the map. It's right on the western coast of Sweden, which I didn't even know existed. White sand beaches, you can see down there on the lower left. So I think this is a destination we have to add to our Punxsutawney trip.
Well, Mark, I probably came within 20 miles of that town. I have connections up in Frederikshavn, Denmark.
Okay.
The very tip of the Jutland Peninsula, the very, very tip up there, the peninsula. And the gentleman that I have connections with is a sea captain that takes boats from Sweden and runs them through the islands to get to the port in Denmark there. And we actually went across to Sweden right through that very narrow channel of water. And you're right, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country, not very well populated. And like I said, I probably was within 20, 25 miles of this town at a number of different times. Well, it's cool. Interesting.
Well, then you know the way, and you can pay for the rental car. Well, I got to tell you, I was actually a really good student with geography, and I pay attention to this kind of stuff. But I'm looking at this map, and if you had me draw this before without seeing this, I didn't know this was here. I didn't know that there was a land bridge between Denmark and Sweden, basically.
There isn't.
Well, yeah, but you got to cross there is. It's a bridge. It's not like an ocean.
Oh, no, that's no, you can take freighters through that strait, Mark.
Yeah.
I mean, there's
You mean ferries?
okay, you can take freighters through that strait. That goes to the Baltic Sea.
Oh, I know. It's big, but it's
Yeah.
not as wide as that red circle. Anyhow, we're getting off the subject. Ken and I'll do our trip planning on another time. But now we have Varberg, Sweden, and the professor has been pretty cool. This is where we started. He had actually published a list of quality companies a little while back. These were the domestic companies, and you can see a whole bunch of companies that we know and love. Most of them on there. We covered 95% of these, and the ones that we don't cover, I did add to our coverage so that they could be placed on a dashboard and exchange that with the professor and some of the other people in Kim's community circle there on Twitter. And
I just need to also let you know, Mark, he posted, I think after I sent this to you a couple days later, that he's going to be updating this list.
yeah, he did. He and I were actually communicating throughout that time. He doesn't know of the connection between you and me yet.
That's okay. I don't care. I don't care. I have, sometimes I'm shocked on how many little people I've figured out to follow and do. You know what I mean?
We'll have some fun with this. So anyhow, there's good domestic companies, mostly domestic, and then there was a fairly significant number of international companies. I don't know if Fevertree made this list. I think they're on the new list. Yeah, here's Fevertree. We were just talking about the gin and soda company. But there's a bunch of companies on here that we already cover, like Ferrari and a few others. But there's a large number of companies on here that we don't, and we'll be attempting to cover here in the near future. And so just working through this, again, this was a few months old, maybe a year old. I don't know what the legacy of this particular list was. And he came back with this one. And this one from A to Z, basically blending the two lists. And he blew away a few of the companies on that previous listing. I don't think it was due to anything that we had put out, but some of the lower quality companies on our dashboard actually disappeared from the lists that I was just showing you. And this is a new list, and for the most part, they're generally higher quality companies. The average quality rating or ranking of a company on here is 85 to 86. So, it basically qualifies and meets our definition. And we're kicking around quality definitions and that kind of stuff too. But again, the moral of the story is there's probably some fairly interesting international opportunities on here. And we're just kind of beginning.
I'm always looking for interactive activities that you can run in an investment club and using them for ideas with the clubs in my area and the clubs that I belong to. I'm thinking to myself, it wouldn't be hard at all to, if you back up 2 slides to slide 12, Mark.
Sure.
It wouldn't be hard at all to put this onto a paper, even to do it in color. You're not going to use a heck of a lot of ink to make 15 or 20 copies of this. And then to put it out to members of an investment club and ask them to circle the companies they don't know anything about. That would give you a really good start on high quality that at the same time, maybe you need to become aware of, I really like that idea, and I think I'm going to steal it for myself, okay?
Okay. As long as it helps pay for the tickets to Denmark or Sweden.
Okay. No, I'm not buying you a ticket to Europe. Punxsutawney, maybe. Okay.
Oh, then since I found the list, I get to go too, right, guys?
Hey, absolutely. I'll argue on your behalf.
Come on, if we're all going to tease each other, I got to be in on that.
Well, I think a cruise in that area could work, Ken. We need to explore that more carefully.
A cruise
I've got friends right now in Italy and Croatia.
No, not Punxsutawney. All right, so here's the list again. If we don't cover it, we will attempt to, and you'll see those kind of fold out here over the next few days at Manifest. Here's the current dashboard of companies that we do cover, ranked from the highest quality down. And again, not a final list. This is a work in progress, but you can see the quote from the professor up at the top there. And this is a public dashboard, quality, global, smorgasbord. And just kind of find it kind of fascinating that these guys across the Great Pond are looking at some of the companies that are fairly obscure that we would, that have captured our attention, the Balcoms and the Cognexes and a few others along with the Visas and Apples. But kind of interesting to see what floats to the top of this list, and we'll be building it out based on those two slides you just saw.
Mark, we need to have a conversation because there's somebody else I know who's in Germany who would be interested in this.
Okay. Any other thoughts, Ken?
No, I like the direction this is taking, though. It broadens the horizons. I'm sometimes struck by the fact that people in clubs are afraid to go into names they don't know, and maybe just a little tiny bit of exposure to new names would give them the push they need to explore a little bit about companies and, for that matter, industries where they don't understand. Michael would like to know if any of these companies are Ukrainian, Mark.
I don't believe any of them on this list are. There was some talk of a couple of companies that were impacted by the Ukrainian stuff. Obviously, we had major impact with, was it EPAM?
EPAM Systems,
But did EPAM make this list? They probably did. Yeah, here you go. So here's EPAM. It's not a Ukrainian company, but it's a company that was substantially impacted.
Had a significant Ukrainian workforce.
Yeah, yes. And so we'll be maybe mapping them in some way also, so we can look at that. All right, so let's spend a little bit of time with the Dividend Aristocrats. It's not an area that I've spent a whole lot of time with. Ken, I think you probably have spent a little bit more time with many of these companies, but I do find it fascinating that this list of formidable companies, and again, when you're looking at an average growth rate of 5%, you're talking about some fairly staunch blue chip stalwarts, and they have generated a 10% annualized return over the last approximately 10 years since 2013. So it's a formidable list, and you can see that that's a pretty good looking price chart for this. This is the ETF where you can buy them all if you want, all at once. So the Nobl is the ProShares S&P 500 exchange traded fund, or ETF. So again, very, very consistent. Even the dip here with COVID was fairly muted and a fairly rapid recovery because of the high quality characteristics of these companies. So here's the actual top 20 or 25 companies that are in the Nobl exchange traded fund. And there could even be some relatively undiscovered tickers here, believe it or not. I've never done anything with Amcor right at the top of the list. How about you?
Other than be aware of the name, you're right. Not done any deep dive into it at all.
You know, it's got fairly decent characteristics, a 4% yield and 9% on the prove and 13 on the par. It's it's nothing to sneeze at. It's one of the top performing additions that are. Most of the companies in this fund have been in it since 2013. So when you see most recent additions down there, that's like additions within the last 5 years. So just to give you some perspective. So, interesting characteristics.
Chubb's in there.
What do you see, Kim?
Chubb, what I presented a couple years ago.
Oh yeah,
it's about double.
One of your successful investing selections on the panel. Chubb is CB.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they've had a pretty good run. Obviously a formidable company in the insurance realm. All right. Many of you have written to me, and you had a pretty good time with the Y Charts session with the two Bryans. And I just wanted to point out that that session is archived and available on their YouTube page. Just go to the Y Charts YouTube page, and it's in the poll position right now. And it was fun listening to these guys, rake the subject over the coals. You can actually get the PDF of the presentation in the Manifest Forum if it's not easy to find at this particular location. But again, they went through and explained. It's a bit of a sensational title because they both use PE ratios. Brian Feraldi more than Brian Stoffel, but they respect the better way to think of it is they think they have some idea of when to de-emphasize the PE ratio in the analysis of any particular company. And again, we have talked about this extensively. This is just so you know that presentation is available at Y Charts. And we have talked about the S-curve for companies and the fact that the PE ratio really does work quite well for companies that with enough operating experience in the realm of positive profitability, and companies that are mature that we like to have amongst our community favorites. So Ken, I don't know if they cleaned this up at all for you or at all, but you like that other colorful one?
I liked both charts, Mark. The only thing that I would do is make a note somewhere that their chart tends to drive home the idea that each of these sections is approximately the same length in time, and I would drive home the point that none of these sections have to be the same length of time as any other section, and some of these sections can last as long as 50 or 60 years. So, but other than that, I think it's a great idea. I'm still mulling this hypergrowth and when do I switch to PE ratio, if I ever switch to PE ratio, and I'm asking myself if maybe PE is sort of useful in the third category and then very useful in the fourth category. But I like the notes they've made.
Yeah, and I just kind of picked a number out of the air. I kind of see that hypergrowth as that period of time when a company's growth rate and sales growth forecast is above 20, perhaps even above 30. And, it's that type of company that just drives us a little bit crazy, especially if you're in a meeting where one of the rules is thou shall not use a PE greater than 30.
Above 30, yeah. Yep.
And you're looking at a company that perhaps justifies a 45 or 50, and you point out that Paychex was at 45 for 2 decades, and people tell you, no, it wasn't. And you say, yes, it was. And, so I think, above 20 or 30% is probably in there in that section 3. And I agree with you, Ken. It really is a variable amount of time. So yeah, maybe the thing we could do, I'm thinking out loud here, is take a company like Hershey's and contrast it with a company like Under Armour and basically show how these can be, it applies to both of them, but they're going to look a lot different, and I think my theory is that there is no section 5 for Hershey's on this graph.
At least not now that we can foresee. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, unless they really mess something up bad. I mean, they have a pretty reliable product and a extremely reliable demand.
And maybe instead of that line falling off of a cliff like it does in section 5, that line moves to be almost horizontal in section 5. We could call it decline / and then maybe another word to it. But we're breaking somebody else's picture here, so that's I think this is a really well done representation of the way you might think about some of these things. And I point people to the fact that they're pretty staunch on the fact that you have to have earnings before you can start to think about these things. That you have to have revenue, and that revenue has to come from somewhere. Notice they start at 0. They don't start their profits at 0, but they start selling something.
Mm-hmm.
They have a product of some sort. You can't just raise money and declare yourself a company and then sit there for a while. We learned in the dot-com bubble that that wasn't a very good business model. So I like that, and I like the fact that in order to move into anything approaching maturity or approaching, in my mind, consistent profitability, you have to make earnings as well as sales, and that's that vertical red line. You have to cross that vertical line into the positive territory at some point before you consider it for consistency, and before I would consider it for any major piece of a portfolio that I was managing. That wouldn't stop me from looking at small things prior to that, but only in a way that wouldn't upset the majority of the rest of my portfolio.
Yeah, I have a few of these, but obviously the majority of mine are out here.
Yep.
So I have a few of those because it's the difference between core and non-core. All right.
Yeah, and it's tough when you have one that reaches Section 5 and you gotta say goodbye to a dear old friend, but that happens occasionally as well. We both had to say goodbye to companies that we had become a little bit more emotionally attached to than we realized,
Absolutely. All right, so here's a look at our best small companies. Again, these are good through Halloween. And Ken, again, you go out of town and leave us unsupervised, unattended. An offer came in for Sharps compliance at $875. So what you're looking at here is the managed portfolio. We actually sold it. That's the bad news. The good news is it's still active in the traditional portfolio and actually sold. And what that means is our traditional buy and hold portfolio actually caught up pretty much with active. I know you like that.
I do, and I think it's another kind of a lesson completely. And the other kind of the lesson is that when you're dealing with groups of companies like this, I can't remember a year, Mark, when we didn't have at least one of the companies sell out of the portfolio. Can you?
No, I think it's a clean sweep.
Yeah, so
why didn't you remind me of that 3 weeks ago?
I don't want to set it as a rule, but at the same time, that really does help a grouping of small companies when you've picked companies that might have some desirability to some of the big guys. Sometimes a big guy comes in and picks it up and takes it from a sharp negative to a reasonable positive of some sort. So I'm just very pleased to see that the traditional list that we've always done for the last 15 years or so and the active list are performing very, very close together now. I wish they were both performing above the market, but that's just what's happening in the market right now.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress. We still have the bear, which means that the Russell 2000 growth exchange traded fund is deep into the bear zone, and that it's just a reminder of how tough it is right now. So our recent selection of In Mode, because I did bless that one, is doing pretty well. And the energy services one's okay. Ranpak is misbehaving a bit, but again, we're supposed to just take a deep breath. iRobot was up 5% day before yesterday.
Okay.
It needs a lot more days like that, but
a lot more 5%. Keep on moving there.
We're not moving the needle enough yet. But and Greenbrook Partners also had a few good days there, and it's up to almost 8% relative return. So, all right.
I noticed that Malibu's moved almost up to a zero relative return, which in my mind is saying something for the, based on the product and everything else. I'm really glad to see that staying even, or up or down just a touch in this market.
Yeah.
Good job, Malibu.
I would consider Malibu, Green Brick. There's some pretty formidable companies in there that have a pretty good story. Of course, Boston Beer, same instructions apply. Buy a bunch of their Truly product and either drink it or pour it down the drain, please. We got to get rid of that inventory. Okay, here's the current standings for the Groundhog. These are not going to match your dashboards. Everybody be patient and just count to 10. These are split adjusted for Google. That is a split in progress, and I think GameStop is also splitting. But Sean Mace has taken over the lead, and it's quite a race there between Sean and Susan and Herb, and for that matter, anybody at the top of that chart is within striking distance. Let's hope it stays that way. I would love to have another year where we have 5 people within 0.2% of each other. Ann Manning won in the last minute of the contest about 10 years ago. So, and then I also won in the last couple of minutes versus Ken a few years before that. So it's fun when that happens.
I think everybody also wondered, Mark, did you adjust any data for that to happen?
Well, yeah, the numbers were.
Oh, come on.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks,
I'm
Kim.
just teasing.
They were carefully checked to make sure they came out right.
I'm sure they were. And you might have had a little tree fever mix with you with your gin, huh?
Well, yeah, the pizza and adult beverages were involved. There's no doubt. All right. The good news here is that our average relative return is actually moving up nicely. It was in negative double digits not that long ago. We are seeing more positive numbers on this chart, so let's just keep making progress. The monkey has moved back to 14, so that makes us crazy.
Yeah, he had sunk down to about 25.
I know it.
He's back up again now, so okay.
Now, Kathy was heating up, but she's calmed down and settled into 163rd. I have, however, Kathy and I are like one. We're both in this together, and I have moved up a couple of spots, but I'm not even going to tell you what the number is.
I like to see
am I probably right next to you,
up into the top 30 now. So we have one of the knights up in the top 40, size up at 28. So that's great.
Yeah, a lot of the same cast of characters there too. So again, be patient as we shake out the Google stuff. This is an interesting chart that, again, another one of Kim's buddies on Twitter shared with the world. And Jake Farnham, that you see down there at the bottom, you can cut and paste that if you want to actually see an animated version of this. And it's really kind of amazing when you see this actually done in a time-lapse, photography type of thing of the tortoise versus the hare. And you look at those numbers for 2021, 2022 for Kathy Wood and the ARC Innovation ETF. That's just astounding to me. I mean, I don't say never very often, I never would have expected the long-term performance of ARC Innovation to sink as much as it has that quickly. But boy, has it ever. A lot of early stage investing, a lot of companies without any earnings ever in that portfolio, and you can see what that leaves you exposed to with the shape of that yellow line on the right. And obviously, Warren Buffett, the turtle there, has actually passed them fairly recently. And I don't any other lessons on there, Ken, other than don't buy too many companies that have never made a profit.
Well, you know what I'm going to say. Don't buy any companies that don't make a profit. So.
Yeah, well, this also tells me if you find something that has new innovation, put it on a watch list and put an alert on it when it goes up 25%. So that then you haven't forgotten about it, because I'd forget about it because I'd get too busy. If I had an alert on it, I know when it's starting to move up, and then I can check to see if it has earnings, because I'll be the first to admit I found Fevertree, they had no earnings. And I was like, set mentality, they don't have any earnings. Yes, they seem to have lots of growth. Yes, it looks like they will continue the growth, but there's no earnings. I didn't know, and I kind of forgot about it until you just pointed it out. If I'd had it on an alert, I would have noticed it a lot sooner.
Yeah, and I think the other thing that it reminds us, the subject of Roman candles. Ted Brooks actually made a post in the Manifest Investing Forum about, he's actually talking about the Feraldi and Stoffel presentation, but this notion of a company that looks like it just might change the world, as it emerges, it becomes a real company and takes off like that yellow line, and then that's all good until it isn't. And Roman candles are pretty reliable, and they happen all the time. So maybe if your investment, even if you think it's a company that might change the world, a trailing stop limit order might be applicable for companies that have that yellow shape. Maybe it's just a reminder of that. We have talked about that in the past, of using trailing stop limit orders on Roman candle type characteristics. So, it's right there. Roman candle would have worked.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That would, because we've obviously had a pullback in the market. PayPal has pulled back, 70, 80%?
Yep.
But they also have $4 billion of cash on the balance sheet. But it just got overhyped, and the stock price got way up there.
Yeah, we should probably rake that one over the coals again here fairly soon, too. I'm not sure if it's in the roundtable portfolio or not, but we could take a look at it. Here's your reminder that we do archive all of these sessions at YouTube on the Manifest Investing page, from the roundtables to the bull sessions to some separate educational sessions. And we actually just crossed 900 subscribers. Thank you. Please encourage your friends to do the same. Here's some quick screening results that I turned in at commonstock.com, another area that I've been playing around a little bit. And this is what we were talking about in the green room. Fevertree Drinks is a company out of the UK that makes the product there shown on the right. Somewhat of a direct competitor to the Sam Adams situation that we have, but fairly decent picture in terms of the sales trajectory and even the earnings, which has matured a bit. Profitability has matured a bit, but seems to be fairly strong, fairly decent expectations. But we are looking at low teens for the return forecast, and decent quality for a situation like this, an emerging company. I think if they continue to execute well, they'll only get stronger in that regard. And
Mark, can you repeat where these 5 ideas came from?
This is actually just a quick screen on Manifest Investing, searching on Relative Strength Index, without placing any restriction on quality. So basically just kind of swinging for the fences. This is actually for a stock picking contest, so I'm virtually guaranteed to finish last.
I don't know. I think I'll be right with you, Mark.
But again, and this is probably a subject we'll cover in greater detail here fairly soon. Also, we have found that the Relative Strength Index can be a really neat source of ideas, usually when combined with the triple play, in a bear market / recession type environment. We'll talk about hot dogs and that kind of stuff, but it has been a very rewarding area, and that's simply what's being attempted to use here.
Mark, I'm going to ask you a question and ask you to save the answer till next bull session, or maybe even 2 bull sessions. But I have a distinct feeling that the RSI has been a better indicator at the low side rather than the high side. And I'd like to know if you're getting any of those kind of feelings as well. Save the answer for next time, okay?
Okay, I will. All right, here's our picture reminder that we have our 12th birthday coming up next Tuesday, July 26th. The link to join it is on the website at Manifest Investing under events. It's also available under the Mid-Michigan events listing on the Better Investing webpage. And with that, any closing thoughts, Ken or Kim?
Well, I would just like to invite everybody to a program that's being done by the Indianapolis Better Investing Chapter. It'll be on the first Saturday of the month, starting at 9:30 in the morning Central Time. If you'd like more information, go to the Indiana chapter on the Better Investing website, and we're also going to be posting links, if we already haven't done that, on Manifest Investing. Mark and I will be doing a couple of hours, and the tentative title for part of the presentation is "Back Up the Truck." So we'll see where we go with that.
That came from him, folks. So you might want to protect your portfolios. Just kidding. All right, Kim. So you find a way to stay cool down there.
I'm trying.
Okay. And with that, we'll sign off. Thanks, everybody. See you next time.
Good night.
Bye, guys.